Good evening, everybody. This is Madhog, thy master, joined tonight by the chosen one of legend, the hero himself, hedonistic actor, aka Matimali.
All hail your hero. Don't worry, I'm here to save the day.
Thou must save the day.
Oh yeah.
But thou must!
It doesn't matter if I want to save the day. I still have the must.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to stop you right there. You know, it's a good thing that future games in the series have removed the Renaissance English translation to facilitate the reading of the text for, foreigners.
It just replaced it with puns.
Yes. Actually, never mind. I miss the old Renaissance English translations. Anyway, what are we talking about exactly here, Matti?
Well, my good fellow mate, we are just spoken about the Dragon Quest series, the ultimate pinnacle of the Nipponese role-playing game experience.
Did you really seriously say Nipponese? Oof. Okay, so I'm going to take this introduction, throw it into the bin, and start the game over. I'm going to rename the character.
Oh no, did I say some kind of slur?
No, you probably didn't. It was just weird to hear you say Nipponese instead of Japanese. I don't know why you felt the need to say Nipponese, but here we are. This is
That's
our
how
life
Japanese
now.
call themselves.
You took the Japanese word for Japan, which is pronounced Nihon, by the way, added the incorrect translation of Nippon to it, and then added "is" at the end, and now you have Nipponese, which I'm pretty sure is not a real word.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but don't say it again. That was funny, though. I'm going to keep all of this in, even though it has nothing to do with Dragon Quest. Speaking of which, let's talk about Dragon Quest, which is a series that, depending on whom you ask, does not need any introduction. But we are going to introduce it anyway. It's a very fascinating series, one that I have been a fan of, on and off, really, for the vast majority of the past 15 to 20 years, I would say.
Yeah, I've enjoyed some of the games I played from the series.
Which games of the series have you played, by the way?
1 to 5 and 9.
You played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9?
Yes.
Wow, I am impressed. I think you played more games than I have, actually.
Oh.
My first ever game in the series was Dragon Quest V. It was my first introduction to the series, and again, depending on who you ask, it is the best entry in the series.
Yeah, if you don't want to play every Dragon Quest, but want the definite experience, 5 is a valid choice for that.
And also, it's one of the most highly regarded JRPGs of all time. I followed that with Dragon Quest IX, which is a weird beast that deserves its own analysis. Then I went back to Dragon Quest IV. Your review of it inspired me to play it, so I played it last year, basically.
So my reviews do have an effect.
Yes, they do. And then, of course, Dragon Quest XI, which is the one that finally managed to get a proper foothold in the Western market.
I'm wondering, did 8 manage to do that before?
Not really. Not especially. And then, in preparation for this podcast, this week, I went back in time and played Dragon Quest I. Specifically the version that the Switch has available, which isn't the best looking version, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I just went for the grey area of emulation and played the 1, 2, 3 on.
Well, it's not only that it runs poorly, it's that they smoothed out the edges of the pixel characters, and now they look pretty ghastly because of that.
So was it the 8-bit version or the later 16-bit re-release?
Now, actually, I think it's the HD port of the 16-bit version, but again, the pixels have been smoothed out, so now it looks like a Windows game from 1995, and I don't like that look.
Yeah, there was a set resolution for all those games when they were.
Yes, I mean, when you look at the work, the very good work Sega did with its HD port of Phantasy Star for the same console, the comparison is painful. Since I brought up Dragon Quest numero uno, we might as well start from there and just grind our way up, see what I did there, through 11 main line games, not counting the spin-offs. Yes.
I assume you haven't played any spin-offs?
No. Have you?
Me neither.
Okay, like I said, this is about the main line Dragon Quest series. The franchise that pretty much defined how JRPGs would be made for the foreseeable future. Every Japanese-made RPG role-playing game is either a direct answer or a counter-answer to Dragon Quest. And it's about time we contextualize how exactly that came to be.
Though Dragon Quest itself was inspired from a Western computer role-playing series like Ultima and especially Wizardry.
Yes, absolutely. I was meant to bring that up. Dragon Quest did not invent the concept of a turn-based combat or even the concept of a role-playing video game. Like you just brought up, it had its own influences in the computer gaming scene in the West. Ultima, various dungeon crawlers, and also everything that came before that inspired those games, such as Dungeons and Dragons, and everything up until that point when it comes to the fantastical medium is an answer to Tolkien, and so on and so forth. Basically, everything has been invented, and everything that exists is derivative of something that has already been made, and that's fine.
Yeah, though I guess what Dragon Quest, the first game, did was to take all kind of this extra package out of the formula and make it in its most simple form.
That's really funny to think about this, that a JRPG from 1986, the year of its original Japanese release on the Nintendo Entertainment System, by the way, was considered the streamlined version of what already existed back then in terms of role-playing video games.
Though I haven't played any Ultima or Wizardry, just based on the knowledge of what I know about those games.
I played approximately 2 minutes of Ultima 4 and never again. That's all my contribution to that discourse.
Yeah.
Yes, because these old games, in those old computer systems available in the early 80s, they had so many keybinds, so many inputs, so many controls. It was something that only the more dedicated computer nerds could ever possibly crack open and understand how it works. It's no fun for the rest of us. In a way, Dragon Quest did something that at the time would be the equivalent of what many modern RPG would be doing right now. Taking what was already there in a more flawed, more rough state, and carve something more accessible for all to enjoy. And it definitely worked because when it comes to its popularity in Japan, Dragon Quest is basically unrivaled. It's the equivalent of Star Wars in the rest of the world, really. It is insanely popular in ways I cannot even begin to account.
I think Final Fantasy is with equal footing with it.
No, not really, because Final Fantasy, if you're a gamer, if you've ever been a gamer, if you like video games, or even if you're just a casual fan of video games, you most certainly must have heard of it. In Japan, your grandmother might have heard of Dragon Quest. That's on a whole other scale. Does your grandmother know of Final Fantasy?
I haven't asked.
I'm pretty sure you know the answer already. That
Yeah.
should give you an idea of how popular Dragon Quest is in its home country of Japan. Every game is basically a cultural event. It's just very big.
Yeah, I do know some urban legends about the sales days of games, especially the third one, which according to the urban legend was a cause for some law that no Dragon Quest game should be released on school days or something.
That would not surprise me. But we'll get to Dragon Quest 3 eventually. Let's go back to Dragon Quest 1. And how very simple it is. It was. By today's standards, it is the most simple basic RPG you could possibly play in terms of plot, setting, gameplay, etc., etc. It is predictably a bit cryptic to follow because at some point you find yourself lost and you need to realize where exactly you need to go in order to find the key item that will allow you to progress in another area of the game. You've played old RPGs, so you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, so much grinding.
Honestly, not as much as Dragon Quest IX, if I'm being honest. But then again, Dragon Quest IX has enough meat to justify it, because it's a game from 2 decades later, really.
Yeah, plus in Dragon Quest IX's battle system is a more refined version from the first one, where there wasn't yet that much variation in battling.
No. The battle system in Dragon Quest, with the exception of 10, for reasons that we will get into at the appropriate time, has always been the same. It has never really changed. That very specific turn-based combat style, and really the only significant changes to that combat style over the years were more about the presentation of it. Because at some point they switched from the first-person perspective during random encounters to a third-person perspective when the technology would allow it to actually look good. But otherwise, the combat has always remained the same. Again, with one significant exception. The first game obviously does not have the same quality of life improvements that future titles would have, but it sets the foundations quite nicely. You have the hero character, the chosen one of destiny, who has to go and fight the demon lord, or in this case the dragon lord, because it's the first game in the series, so there has to be a dragon to fight.
Well,
obviously.
Technically he is the demon.
Yes, I know, but the English translation says the main villain is called the Dragon Lord. Speaking of weird localizations, they changed the title of the game in the United States release.
Yeah, apparently there was some role-playing game system with the same name, so they had to change it.
So they changed it from Dragon Quest to Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
That might have been a contributing factor to the lack of success of this series in the Western world. That and the unexpected roaring success of Final Fantasy amidst gamers, not really as a pop cultural event outside of video games, which is what Dragon Quest would become pretty much around the time of 3. And then when 5 comes out,
Dragon Quest, at least in my opinion, certainly hasn't aged well.
No, I find it quaint. And inexplicably charming. There is something truly nostalgic, if that's the right word, about a game this simple. You can see not only the elements that would define the genre for years and years to come, you can also have a deeper appreciation for all those early video game design conventions that future games would drop out and phase out entirely, such as how you save the game. You can only save the game by talking to the king in the starting castle, the starting area of the game.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Well, I did use emulator's quick saving feature. But...
Yes, of course, but I played it properly, so let me complain about it.
Damn,
Honestly, it was fine. A lot of this game, and I do mean a lot of this game, is about walking around all over the place, grinding for levels, also farming for money to buy the best armor, in hopes that you might be ready for the next dungeon that you have to cross. And on that note, Dragon Quest is pretty much a game of its time. No, let me rephrase it. It is the game of its time. It's essentially the first of its kind, the first Japanese-style role-playing game, which, I remind you, was supposed to be a streamlined version of PC dungeon crawling RPGs. I, for one, definitely appreciate how much worse those older games were compared to Dragon Quest.
It's interesting that there was what the later games didn't have was kind of this small inventory management gameplay mechanic where when you go to the dungeons, it's completely dark, but you have torches, and the torches eventually fade out. So.
Yes, that happens. That's definitely there. That's one of the mechanics they would drop eventually to facilitate exploration of the dungeons. They must have realized there is no point in doing that, really. It's just a way to waste time. But you can get a spell in Dragon Quest that makes all the torches trivial. You can get a spell called Glow that allows you to illuminate dungeons. And it's a big waste of magic points, if you ask me.
Yeah, the torch mechanic works better in Dungeon Master.
Right. So, Dragon Quest, again, very basic, very simple. There is the hero, there is the bad guy. Find a way to reach the castle of the bad guy, defeat the bad guy, save the princess if you want. It's optional, by the way, actually. And then save the world.
Wait, it was?
Yes, the princess is stowed away in a dungeon on the westernmost part of the world map. It's not a very big map overall, which is good because, again, you have to constantly traverse it in order to go save the game in that one spot. But, like I said, the princess is in this dungeon, and you can technically try to save her whenever you want. In reality, you have to be strong enough to defeat the dragon guarding her prison. And then the best moment of the game happens, in which you take her upon your strong, big arms, and she's all, oh my, and you're like, oh yeah. So you are carrying this lady, actually carrying this lady, all across the land. I think you can technically bring her with you to the final boss if you want, and never give her back to her father. Her being in your arms does not affect at all your ability to slay monsters. And I have this mental picture of just the two of them romantically strolling around in the countryside, slaying monsters on the side, skipping and jumping. Tra-la-la-la-la. It's honestly adorable.
Yeah, when he's not holding her on his arms, he just flips her to his back and thinks he can fight.
No, she's the one swinging the sword while he's holding her. She's not even paying attention about what she's slaying. She's just transfixed by his manly eyes.
So I can actually leave her in the dungeon, and then I don't have to hear the, but thou must. Girl, I don't even know you. I can't make that kind of decisions that hastily.
The only reason why you would want to save the princess is because she gives you a specific item. That item being a promise ring, which you are supposed to use to properly calculate the exact coordinates of an item that you need that happens to be in the middle of a poisonous swamp. Of course, if you are playing the modern port of this game on the Switch, all items that you would otherwise need coordinates to find are visible on the map, so that one object that she gives you is effectively pointless. Also, if you have a walkthrough, you don't need it. So you can technically leave the princess there and complete the game anyway.
How does it affect the ending?
I don't know, but speaking of the ending, when you get finally to the Dragon Lord, the only boss in the game, by the way, I told you it's very simple, the only real boss in the game, when you get to him, he tries to lure you into the dark side. Very Emperor Palpatine of you. And you have the choice, actually, to join him in his evil empire. The only reason why I didn't go for it is because I would have had to traverse his dungeon all over again just to get to him if I wanted the good ending, so I didn't bother with that.
Yeah, though you didn't lose much, the other ending didn't seem. It's just that we just rule the world, and then the game freezes and the edges of the screen go red. All the white text that was shown goes red as well.
So
Just
basically the text informs you are evil now.
Dungeon music just keeps playing and playing in the background.
Alright. It's interesting to find these neat little details in Dragon Quest. It is also very interesting to discover that this genre-setting game from 1986 already had such mechanics as choices and side quests. Again, the princess is technically a side quest, since it is not necessary to beat the game. It is recommended, though. I still count it as a side quest, in that sense. This title was simultaneously taking already existing gaming conventions while inventing new ones that would inspire future generations. It was fascinating to play this game. In its own charming way, I had fun with it, even with all of its dated design hang-ups, if you will. But yes, it took me 14-15 hours to beat this game. If you remove all the grinding, it would take 5 hours at best.
Yeah. It was a good game 30 years ago.
Absolutely, a good game for its time, and a classic that deserves respect. It's a relic of video game history, after all. And it's great that you can actually play it now, even though you get the objectively ugliest version of it.
Yeah. It's still on my bottom 100 video games I've played list, though.
And also, I do like that certain recurring gags in the series would date back all the way to the first game. I was not expecting to see Puff Puff in the original Dragon Quest, let me tell you. Remember Puff Puff?
Yeah,
Poof
it
Poof!
has been a while since I've played.
Let's do Poof Poof! Plenty of Poof Poof! Only 20G! Naughty. Naughty lad.
On what context did it appear in?
Oh, I could explain the joke to you, but it's funnier if you find it out for yourself.
I do know the Puffs, but I was wondering which context the first game is.
Funnily enough, it's the same exact context that you have in Dragon Quest XI, which was in many ways a return to form when it came out. So yes, you pay a lady and she does poof poof, puff puff. She puff puffs all over you. Oh, Dragon Quest.
Yeah, in some versions she uses 2 slimes.
Oh, I almost forgot. Let's talk about the enemies in Dragon Quest and why they are the most iconic video game enemies of all time. So much so that they come back every single time in every new Dragon Quest game, and they have never changed throughout the decades. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was thinking, I guess I've seen everyone from the first game.
Yes, first of all, there is the official mascot of the series, the slime. It's perfect.
Let's just ignore that we kill them by the hundreds.
Yeah, well, yes, but, they respawn. They are video game enemies. There's the slime and the she-slime, the first 2 enemies you find in Dragon Quest. The most iconic enemy type in Dragon Quest. There have been spin-offs starring the slime. That's how popular it is. The reason why all of these enemies are so instantly recognizable and iconic regardless if you know the series or not, when you look at these characters' illustrations, they are instantly etched into your mind. And the reason for that, of course, is for the character designer of the entire series. The legendary Akira Toriyama, author of Dragon Ball, little known series, and of course Dr. Slump before that.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, I am, but anyway, so Dragon Ball, I think it's more important for our dissertation, our gaming dissertation, if you will. Because when Dragon Quest came out, again, it was the year 1986. Dragon Ball began publication in 1984. So most of Toriyama's career has been Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest simultaneously. Two intellectual properties that have the name dragon in them.
Yeah.
This could have not been better planned, honestly.
Also in his repertoire, Chrono Trigger was also very important work.
I think Chrono Trigger needs its own podcast, if I'm being honest. There is so much to be said about it. It is such a lightning in a bottle masterpiece that can never be replicated. The unique conditions for its existence are something else entirely. Anyway, so back to Dragon Quest. We mentioned Akira Toriyama as the character designer of the series, giving it its instantly recognizable, iconic aesthetic. We would be remiss not to mention the director of the series.
Yuji Horii, I think was his
Yuji
name.
Horii, yes, which has been consistently the director of this series since the beginning, and I believe he directed all the games.
Yeah, I check his Moby Games page, and it seems like Dragon Quest is the only thing he has ever done video game-wise, aside from some random crossovers where Dragon Quest characters in it.
That's dedication. And naturally, we have to mention the composer of the series, Koichi Sugiyama, which gave us such memorable medleys as da 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 dun 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 da dun 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 da dun da da dun 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 dun, etc. And also dun 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 dun. And who could ever forget which is the little titty that plays when you level up.
Oh, and also
the little stinger when you wake up from a rest at the inn. And also which is the music of when you get cursed. That one. Something along those lines. It's the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, I'm not usually
you.
Stupid enough to equip cursed items.
So, fun fact about Dragon Quest. There is a place in the starting village, the only place in the entire game in which you can be detoxed from curses. And the only cursed item in the game can be found in a treasure chest that's literally 3 rooms away from the final boss.
Just one final newbie trap.
Essentially. You know, I wore that item, but the cursed item is not the reason I lost the first encounter with the Dragon Lord. No, the only reason I lost is because I was low on magic points for all the battles that I have encountered before. Because another element that would eventually be phased away from the genre is the lack of ways to replenish your MPs with potions. You cannot do that. The only way to replenish your magic points is by sleeping at inns. Another one of many conventions that would be appearing constantly in the games. All of the classic conventions, the tropes, if you will, the design tropes of JRPGs are already there, etched in the DNA of Dragon Quest. Sleeping at inns, healing herbs, healing spells, teleportation spells, walking.
Wasn't the first Dragon Quest also the system that if you die, you wake up in the nearest church and have lost half of your money?
Yes, Dark Souls owes unexpectedly a lot to Dragon Quest. They all do. They all do in some subtle way.
Yeah, I just thought that losing the money was a hassle, so I just loaded my saves whenever that happened.
Well, there is a point in which losing money becomes moot towards the end game, because at that moment you have all the best equipment possible and you are appropriately leveled up.
I earned that money fair and square, so I'm going to hoard it.
There is nothing left for you to buy at that point. Anyway,
then,
so...
the brave hero can retire as a rich man. And
well, he's going to actually go and found his own kingdom, which actually works as a segue for the second and third game in the series, because I believe those first 3 titles are considered their own trilogy.
Yeah.
There is a very small narrative continuity between 1, 2, and 3, if only because the hero of the games is always a descendant to the legendary Heldrick, I believe, is the name. Although, depending on the translation, he must have a different
Eldrick.
name. Yes, Eldrick. Let's talk about the proper setting of Dragon Quest, because, yes, as we established, it is very much a traditional, simple, medieval fantasy setting, one that draws inspiration from a lot of Western fantasy media, such as Dungeons and Dragons, all the way back to Tolkien. It must have clicked something fierce with Japanese audiences. A very common trope in JRPGs, or indeed even in anime, in a lot of Japanese media, come to think of it, is the portrayal of the institution of the church, Christianity specifically, as the bad guy. Now, a lot of it seems to be a direct counter-answer to the way the church is portrayed in Dragon Quest. The church is always seen as good guys. It's the place where you go to save the game, to get detoxed, to get a divination, learning how many more thousands of experience points you need to get to level 20 or something. It's a core mechanic of the series, and as such, they are the good guys. But in a lot of RPGs, the church is the bad guy.
Yeah, it's a kind of when you need a tough menace and something that's threatening, then of course it's something like some big organization that could be a good opponent for the underdog hero. So it's often a church, a government, or such.
Yes, but you see, in the specific context of religion, this might very well be a byproduct of Japan's complex history with Christianity, especially on the more imperialist side of things. There was an earlier attempt, cultural and religious takeover from Christianity, and later on there was a lot of oppression to Christians in Japan. Like I said, it's a complex history that we don't have the time or the appropriate means to explore. But I do believe it plays a role in the way the church is often portrayed in Japanese media.
How did we get here?
We were talking about typical elements of the series and how they would be reused or contextualized in other series, in other JRPGs or indeed Japanese media. And we would be remiss not to mention the church, at least, because it's one of those tropes that are pretty much everywhere. You play any RPG ever, oh look, there's a church, I wonder if it's evil. Right?
Yeah, it was so shocking when I first played Grandia 2 and was like, what? Church can be evil?
Really? Next you're going to tell me that corporations are evil. Who could have ever seen that coming?
Game with that twist.
Really? That was your first exposure to evil church. Okay. You have to start from somewhere, I suppose. Dragon Quest is a franchise that very much relishes in its own tradition. The combat system has mostly remained unchanged. The story has mostly remained unchanged, with good guys versus evil demon bad guys, heroes chosen of destiny, the church is good. You've seen it. It's been inspiring. It has inspired. It's been imitated. It's been duplicated. You name it, it has been done. But there is a deceptive design innovation with each new game in the series. While its core values in terms of design or storytelling remain fundamentally unchanged, each new title in the series has introduced something new and different that's unique to them, and then of course inspired everyone else. For example, Dragon Quest II introduced the novel concept of party members.
Oh, yeah.
The first game did not have any party members in it. You were just one singular hero fighting evil.
And that's part of the reason why the combat was so boring.
Honestly, I found that quite refreshing, because for once I did not have to focus on grinding every single member of a party. I can just focus on one.
One-person combat works better for action role-playing games where you can add some kind of tacticality in it.
Sure, but again, it's a game from 1986. They still have a lot to figure out about themselves. So from Dragon Quest II onward, there are party members. And the game is very much designed to be dealt, to be played with multiple people in your party, because you cannot do it alone anymore.
Apparently the full title being Dragon Quest II Luminaries of the Legendary Line. What?
Yes, you have to appreciate these longer subtitles, which I don't know if they are of English localizations making, or if they are just the original titles loyally translated.
Apparently the Japan title is Pantheon of Evil Spirits, but yeah.
It's on that level, really. So yes, party members from the second game onward. And then there's the veritable revolution of the third title in the series, Dragon Quest III. Customizable characters.
The Seeds of Salvation. That's the third game's full title.
Other than the hero character, you can also have other party members, but in this case, you can actually create these party members. As in, you can choose their classes, which would determine their appearances, and then also pick up names for them. Up until that point, you can only choose the name for your character. And also you have a full 4-members party in this one.
Playing the third one was rather entertaining. Out of the more archaic entries, this was the one that managed to age better.
It is lauded as an absolute masterpiece. And it was definitely innovative in 1988 when it came out. Think about it, the first 3 games in Dragon Quest all came out 1 year from each other, 1986, 1987, and 1988.
Yeah, that's... well, there was not as advanced technology, so making games was a bit faster.
But if you consider that the gap of years between each title from this moment forward becomes much longer, I would say. Still, it's impressive that they all came out so close from each other and they were all resounding successes. They came out swinging out of the door, so to speak. And the third one in particular was a revolution for its time. And speaking of revolutions, the tail end of 1987, December specifically, saw the release of Dragon Quest's first major competitor. Say it with me.
Final Fantasy.
Phantasy Star.
Oh.
I knew you were going to say Final Fantasy, but no, the real answer is Phantasy Star.
Oh yeah, that one too.
On the Sega Master System, although you're not that much off the mark, because Final Fantasy did in fact come out in the same week of Phantasy Star. That's a neat little coincidence for you.
Trying to remember if Phantasy Star was a 87 or 88 game, but...
No, it's December 87, but of course it came out in the West in summer of 1988. So as far as
Yeah.
we are concerned, it's a game from 1988.
Mm.
Whereas Final Fantasy would be localized and distributed in the West a good 2 years after its Japanese release.
Yeah. Apparently there was some shortage with the cartridges, so many Japanese releases took a tad longer to get into Western market at that time.
Phantasy Star was the exception, again because it was the first party game from a company, Sega, that was in direct competition with Nintendo in the console market. So they tried to properly get a foothold in the Western market before Nintendo could. And in a way it did, not as much as Final Fantasy, of course. Anyway, so Dragon Quest III was the game that pretty much ensured the legacy of this franchise for generations to come. I am yet to play it. I will definitely do so at some point.
Oh,
but
yeah. I guess I can somewhat recommend it. I mean, it has some quirks of its time, but
although in a way I did play Dragon Quest III, except it was called Dragon Quest IX, and we'll get to that. But first there is Dragon Quest IV, which was the first Super Nintendo Entertainment System release.
Actually, Dragon Quest IV was still on the 8-bit Nintendo.
Oh, you don't say!
5 was the first Super Nintendo entry.
Oh, wow! The first 4 games in the series all came out on the NES.
Yeah, it was released in 1990 originally, so it was...
Oh, okay, so that explains a few things. Dragon Quest IV is sort of considered a bit of the black sheep in the franchise, if only because it is awkwardly sandwiched in between Dragon Quest III and Dragon Quest V, which are the two most lauded titles in the entire pantheon.
I do like 4. I have played the Nintendo DS version, which I own.
Yes, I also own the Nintendo DS version. So most of these games have never seen a proper original release in the West. Therefore, the only way for most of us to actually play them, legally play them, that is, would be to wait for the Nintendo DS remake of them, which they pretty much did it for most, if not all, games in the series up until 7. I remember 4 was remade for the DS, which is the version we both played. 5 was remade for the DS, which is also the version that we both played.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah, 6 was for DS and 7 and 8 were for the 3DS.
Exactly. And of course, 8, which was for PlayStation 2, oddly enough, the first non-Nintendo console release of a Dragon Quest game, if you can believe that.
7 was originally on the first PlayStation, though not only in North America and Japan.
Thanks for correcting me on that. Dragon Quest IX was released for the DS, as in originally released for the Nintendo DS. And then there's the 10th game in the series, which was a Nintendo Wii exclusive. More on that later. And then finally, Dragon Quest XI was released on both PlayStation 4 and then 1 year later on the Nintendo Switch, with the version that you should have actually bought, where the music is not a bunch of awful MIDIs, and instead it's composed by an actual orchestra.
Yeah, the expanded version was on Switch in 2019, September and November 2020. The expanded version also came to PlayStation 4, Xbox One and Windows.
It sucks for those who bought the original version, which was objectively the worst version. Let's go back in time to Dragon Quest IV, though.
Chapters of the Chosen.
This one is interesting because it takes a much different approach to its narrative, in that you don't just start with a protagonist that later meets up with party members and they go on an adventure. Instead, each and every one of the protagonists in the game get their own starting chapter, and we see the story and how it unfolds from their points of view.
Yeah, though really the first 4 chapters are just the extended tutorial. It's the 5th chapter that is the main chunk where the main character is your character that you created.
And yet, my favorite chapter in the game is the one all about the merchant character.
Apparently there is a spin-off with...
Yes, that's the most interesting part about this, because we said that Dragon Quest IV was sort of the black sheep of the series. That's not entirely true, because it still inspired a lot of things in ways you wouldn't even begin to imagine, such as the Mystery Dungeon series, the premier console roguelike series.
Oh, it's a roguelike.
Yes, the Mystery Dungeon series began as a spin-off to Dragon Quest IV, in which you play as this merchant, as this character of which I have forgotten the name, sadly. Do you remember the name?
Torneko Talud.
Torneko is such a good lad, by the way. I love him. He's absolutely funny. The flavor text during battles in Dragon Quest IV is the chef's kiss, because sometimes you can catch him doing a little dumbfounding dance that confounds the enemies, but then he trips and falls on his tailbone.
I didn't like that chapter that much. I just felt it was grindy, repeated itself, and the plot didn't go anywhere.
But I liked it because it was so grounded and simple. You're not following the heroic gestures of the Chosen One. You're following the day-by-day happenings of a family man who's trying to get by and has to fight monsters in order to get by. There is a factor of relatability that usually
Torneko
Dragon Quest doesn't
a
have.
role.
Yes, he's the best character in that game, if I'm being honest. So, of course, he gets picked up for a spin-off in which he has to do exactly that, but with the added threat of permadeath. And if you give me a second, I actually have a copy here. I have a copy here of... Where is it? Aha! There it is! Of the Nintendo DS remake, or port, I should say, of Shiren the Wanderer, the official first entry in the Mystery Dungeon meta-series, which would then go to include such spin-offs as the Pokemon one, and the Chocobo one, and so on.
Oh, okay.
The developers of the Mystery Dungeon series would be Chunsoft. The rest of Dragon Quest IV pretty much plays out like a normal Dragon Quest game after that whole gimmick gets resolved. And then we get to Dragon Quest V. The myth, the legend, the icon.
Hand of the Heavenly Pride.
Once again, we played the DS remake of it, which adds a couple of characters in it that were not present in the original game.
Yeah, at least one.
Yes, we'll get to that. Dragon Quest V did a lot of new things. Introduced a lot of new elements that to this day are still very much unique to that game, that have inspired a ton of other aspects of the video game industry in ways you might not expect. It was so far the most ambitious one in terms of its story. It tells a sprawling narrative that expands through several years.
20 years in total, I believe.
That's impressive in its own right. Also, I do enjoy the subversion, not so subtle subversion of what would otherwise be a staple of the series. The main character, your player character, is not actually the chosen one of destiny. He is going to be the father of the chosen one of destiny. Spoilers, by the way, for a game that's 30 years old, if not more.
1992 was first released.
Yes, it's an old game, but one that holds pretty well, all things considered.
Oh, yes. It's the 79th best game I've ever played.
Wow, I cannot believe you have such a precise list in your head. There is a demon lord to defeat, but the way the game goes about it is that dealing with this menace becomes a family business. Father, mother, son, who also happen to be the chosen one, go at it and team up to put a stop to the evil, and those would be the main party members. The other party members you get in this game are all optional, and they're all monsters. In Dragon Quest V, you could capture the monsters you defeat and add them to your party.
4 years before Pokemon made it cool.
Yes, a young Pokemon is taking notes. Pokemon wouldn't exist without Dragon Quest V, it is fair to say.
Yeah.
This was the first Pokemon before Pokemon, or indeed the entire craze of the monster collecting JRPG. You did that first in Dragon Quest V. You could get a slime to fight for you, a golem to fight for you. The first monster you recruit is actually the main character's childhood friend, the little jaguar fellow. It is so cute. I love it. And then, of course, there is the matter of the titular bride. Right around the alpha waypoint of the game, you are tasked with a difficult choice. That choice, which one of these broads do I marry? That's a very disrespectful thing I just said. I apologize. But yes, you get to choose whom you want to marry and whom you're going to get pregnant with the actual chosen one, which mostly would determine the color of the hair of the kid that you get. But still, it's quite novel for 1992.
Yeah, and the options are a tomboy and what was it, Yamata Nadeshiko type?
The sophisticated pure maiden that you literally just met, or your rough and tumble sweetheart that you've known since you were a kid. I wonder who you're going to choose.
And the DS version also has a third bride. Which
Yes, we're getting there. We're getting into the differences between versions. Because, yes, the DS version, almost as if to mock you.
Oh, yeah, Tsundere, that was the...
Almost as if to mock you, they added a third choice, which is canonically now the sister to the Yamato Nadeshiko character, as you
neutral
out.
Good, true neutral, and neutral evil.
She is pretty much the shrew from the Taming of the Shrew, if you will. And if you so choose to marry her, she's never going to improve. She will keep on treating you like garbage, stepping on you. And some people might be into that, I suspect. But I do love that when you get to make the choice in the DS version, again, it's not something that was present in the original game. Her father wants to make sure this is your choice. Are you sure you want her?
Haughty ones need love too.
Sure. Okay, but let's be completely and utterly frank here. The real choice is Bianca here. It has always been Bianca. 100% of any true Dragon Quest fan will tell you Bianca is the real answer.
I've tried the Bianca and Nera roots. Yeah, Nera it was, yeah.
Nera,
Deborah
yes,
was the
Nera.
sister.
Yes, Deborah was the sister that's not really canonical, if we are being honest. Why would you want to choose this new character when you have Bianca, whom not only you've spent several hours of game together, you've spent a lot of hours grinding and getting all leveled up, so you've already formed a connection with this character as part of your party. So
I'm
why
thinking
would
it
you
from
want to
the-
choose anyone else at that point?
When I'm thinking from the main character's point of view, if you choose the other bride, that he sees Bianca more of a sister than a girlfriend.
You see, I understand that, but here's the problem. If you choose the other woman, Bianca just quietly stops being a character in this game. And she's never part of your party again. That will simply not do. So Bianca forever for this guy.
More rounded up personality.
She is the best. Choose your own bride.
Yeah, though from what I remember from Nira's Road, she can be a sweetheart as well.
But again, there is the problem that we've already spent so many hours working on Bianca and working with Bianca in the game. So we have a connection with her already. Why would I throw that away all of a sudden? If I have no other choice, I cannot marry them both, sadly. I wish I could, but I can't. I can only take one of them. So Bianca it is. This is the Bianca podcast now. For all of these reasons, you can understand why Dragon Quest V hits its player base differently than other titles in the series. There is a level of emotional connection that was unprecedented for RPGs of the time, especially in 1992, on such a big scale. Dragon Quest V was the legacy maker of the franchise. I have nothing to say about Dragon Quest from 6 through 8.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah, 6 didn't interest me when it was on the stores. I guess I kind of heard it it was all a dream ending, and I kind of avoided it, but maybe that's not the case, question mark.
Let me talk your ear off about Dragon Quest IX then. The most different and unique title in the series. For many reasons. It takes direct inspiration from Dragon Quest III, as it is also a game in which you can have a fully customized party.
Mechanically it took from 3. Yeah, I was wondering your previous remark, because story-wise they are vastly different.
Oh, absolutely. Story-wise, it is unlike any other title in the series, if I'm being perfectly honest, but mechanically, it takes a lot after 3. Except now, your characters are fully customizable. There is a proper character creation tool now, and you can make your own original characters. Even the hero can be whatever you want it to be. You can choose the gender, you can choose the aspect, the appearance, certain physical details, and of course you can choose the classes, and there are many classes to choose, and that's neat. There is also a online component to it, which was pretty innovative at the time for the DS. You could technically invite a friend who also owned the game to play in your world. In many ways, Dragon Quest IX served as a prototype for Dragon Quest X.
Though in the nice case, at least here in the western parts, the online thing didn't really work, because it was built for Japan, where the population density is much higher than, let's say, in my hometown of less than 3,000 people, and I probably was the only one who had Dragon Quest IX in that town, so...
Dragon Quest IX sold millions of copies in Japan, I'm sure. Again, it's Dragon Quest, it's insanely popular. Your grandma knows Dragon Quest in Japan, as I put it. I was able to only do cooperative playtime with that game on a local scale, As in, there was another kid who had the Nintendo DS with that exact game in it, and he was sitting 2 feet away from me so we could do local play.
Yeah, well, I never been interested in that much of the online things anyway, as I mainly bought them from the single-player experience.
It was a curious little novelty on the side that I would not really care to explore. So I mostly played the game single player, of course. Speaking of the single player, I mentioned how the story in Dragon Quest IX is shockingly different from what we are used in the series. Your character does not start off as the chosen one of destiny. It doesn't start off as a mortal who happens to be the reincarnation of some ancient hero who was himself an angel descended upon the earth and all that. No, instead you start off as an actual literal angel in heaven.
Yeah, who is...
That's different.
Doing good deeds on earth.
In essence, all those stories, all that lore about a legendary luminary who came from the heaven and then saved the world and was then reincarnated into a mortal to carry on his legacy. You're not playing as the reincarnation of the hero. You are playing as the original angelic savior in Dragon Quest IX. So there were not yet legends about the savior. You were making your legend on the spot. Almost by happenstance, by the way, because before you can say inciting incident, you literally fall off heaven onto the earth by some freaky combination of events. I say heaven, it's very much inspired by Christian cosmology, but we also have the Yggdrasil, the world tree, up there, so it's a combination between that and Norse mythology. Pretty much the building blocks of medieval fantasy when you get down to it. So now you are the original angel savior. Yet to realize, of course, that you would be a savior, you sort of find yourself taking upon that mantle against your will, which is how all the best stories begin, really. And you're traveling across the world, saving lives, solving problems, fighting the big bad, making friends. And then, interestingly enough, spoilers for Dragon Quest IX, by the way, the main bad guy turns out to be a fellow angel. A proper fallen angel, with black wings, might I add. And I think he kills God?
Yeah.
My details are a bit fuzzy on that.
Yeah, it was left rather vague.
When we get back to heaven, in time for the final boss, God is not around anymore, but the main villain sure is.
I guess it was refreshing from all of those sadistic demon lords the series is filled with.
Actually, you do still fight a demon lord in this, it's just that it's not the final boss. In many ways, DQ9 was a breath of fresh air when it comes to the general narrative of the series. It's completely different from anything else. If only this game wasn't as much of a chore to get through in terms of its grinding. I think of all the games in this series, it is the most grind-heavy.
Yeah, Dragon Quest IX I felt it was kind of boring with its repetitiveness, and I guess the story kind of lost its steam at some point, and then it got too much steam and stuff. And
oh yes, Dragon Quest IX also has crafting in it, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I completely forgot that.
I believe it was introduced in Dragon Quest VIII, the crafting system. This was way before it was popular.
But yeah, I don't even own the game anymore. I exchanged in a GameSpot in order to get discount from Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and let me tell you, it was a much better game.
Agree to disagree. I have been relatively cheeky when it comes to mentioning Dragon Quest X, for good reason, might I add. Because we talked about how different Dragon Quest IX is compared to the rest of the series, but it still has the core turn-based combat system unchanged. And then Dragon Quest X comes along, and it's an MMORPG that none of us can ever play because it's not been released in the West. Thanks, Square Enix! This is why I weep that Dragon Quest was never really that strong of a presence in the West when they did go the route of Final Fantasy XI and make the 10th game in the series an MMORPG, where you could actually create your own characters that did not need to be humans for a change. That's the game that we don't get.
Yeah, apparently it was released in 2012, so even after the first incarnation of Final Fantasy XIV.
Yes.
I think before the Realm Reborn.
From what I hear, it is a very successful game in Japan, because of course it is. It's Dragon Quest we're talking about. And it is also the biggest, absolutely biggest departure from the traditional core, the foundations of the series. After that, there's Dragon Quest XI, which is actually a return to form.
I have heard some rumors that they may try to bring 10 to Western market as a single-player experience, but I have no idea if that's true or not.
I can only wish that would be the case. It would be the best of two worlds, really. I want desperately to play Dragon Quest X. I hate the fact that I cannot play the 10th iteration of a series, and yet I can have 9 and 11. What nonsense is that?
Yeah, I feel the pain as I'm a Tales series fan, so there's a lot of things that didn't make to here.
I actually don't have that much to say about Dragon Quest XI, save for the fact that as of this recording, I am yet to finish it.
Echoes of an Elusive Age.
It's a game that I was very enthusiastic about it at first, but then it went on for a bit too long and it lost me, and I became bored with it. It is very much a return to form for Dragon Quest, but that also includes some of its more annoying elements.
Yeah, that also is a problem with many of the Tales games. They just don't know when to stop.
So I might try to pick it up again, but I'm not that invested by it. From my point of view, this is the game that comes after 9. In 9, I could have my cake and eat it too when it comes to character creation and customization. In 11, I am stuck with the most boring and uninteresting protagonist in the entire series. Let's talk about the presentation of your main character in all of these games. Let's rank their appearances.
Main characters. The first game has that blue warrior.
It is a very simple, classic armor, blue armor and helmet with horns, a cape.
And the Dragon Quest II's main character looks pretty much the same, if I remember.
Except he traded the horns for goggles?
Yeah, the third game has the...
Yes, the golden tiara, the spiky hair, very Goku. Instantly iconic. I am partial for the hero in the fourth game, with this sea creature-inspired getup. It's interesting.
He also has
different.
The female version. Female version doesn't wear any pants.
Of course she doesn't. The second most iconic looking hero of the series, of course, comes from Dragon Quest V, where the hero is wearing this purple turban and a cape, and he looks a bit like Piccolo from Dragon Ball.
Oh yeah.
It's a very good look for him.
Yeah.
I don't have, again, anything to say about
I'm looking at
from
the
6 to 8.
Sixth one's cover, and the sixth one's main hero doesn't look good. Kind of like the third one, but the hair is purple and clothing are weird mix of orange and green. Looks goofy. The seventh game has the green cap. The eighth hero looks rather good with his red bandana and blue-yellow.
I think the hero from 8 has a good combination of color, a decent color scheme, but I still don't particularly care about his dress wear. I am very, very, very happy about the way my character in 9 looks, what she wears, and how she carries herself. Unfortunately, it's not a default look. So we might as well skip to 11, where we have what I believe is the most boring looking hero. There is nothing remarkable about him, which in a game like Dragon Quest, that's all about larger than life, iconic characters in terms of their design. Even random NPCs are instantly memorable. He looks like the most forgettable NPC you could possibly find in a video game. You are stuck with him as the protagonist.
Does the narrative focus more on the party members?
No, it is all about him. He is the chosen one of destiny and has to go and fulfill his role as the hero, as the luminary. So it is all about him, and there is nothing ordinary about him, and yet he's presented as the most boring, ordinary NPC you could possibly...
Yeah, maybe he's planned on purpose so as many players could project themselves in his shoes.
That's bollocks, and you know it.
Kind of like the generic white kid in some kids' movies.
That's a spit to the face on Dragon Quest 3 and 5, first of all.
Well, they have some sort of personality and they go through kind of life-changing events.
They don't really have a personality. Their designs have personality, but that's different. And the protagonist from 11 has neither a personality nor a design. Akira Toriyama just phoned it in with this game.
Yeah, though I've never liked the silent protagonist trope anyway.
I tolerate it in Dragon Quest for the most part, because it is Dragon Quest after all. But yes, as of 11, full 3D title in the modern age, having your protagonist not ever say anything and reacting to situations and dialogues by emitting a soft "huh?" is downright offensive. Doesn't have any spoken line otherwise.
Or even facial expressions.
Yes, such minute facial expressions, they might as well not be facial expressions. And that's especially disappointing when you compare it to how much more range the party members have. I believe after that tangent we can successfully wrap up this podcast. Wouldn't you agree?
The Definitive Edition has an optional mode that allows the player to play the game similar to the older Dragon Quest games, kind of make it 60-bit 2D.
Yes, I know that. That's great in theory, but here's a better idea. Why don't I just go back and play the older games instead?
Yeah.
Do you see my point here?
For those who didn't accept that their childhood ended, they can play in the old graphics, the better stories.
Yes, the story in 11 is nothing special. It's the most generic Dragon Quest fare imaginable, if you ask me. Especially coming after 9.
Yeah, I don't like that much most of the villains because they're just the same kind of sadistic demon.
I am absolutely disappointed by the way the main villain looks in this game, because at the very least you could count on the villains in this series to look memorable or memorably campy.
Yeah, at least in 5 there's Bishop Lachia, who is also a sadistic demon lord, but at least every action he does is a punch to the player and the character.
I think we need to wrap up this podcast because we've been flapping our lips for almost 2 hours, and I have to cut down a lot of this.
Yeah, okay. But I say one thing. I think the Dragon Quest 3 has the best final boss music in the series.
Oh, well, that isn't saying much, if I am being perfectly honest. After listening to the same 3 tunes over and over again, I've sort of become numb to the whole Dragon Quest music scene. Once again, thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been our dissertation of the Dragon Quest series. A series that is important to the history of video games as much as it is a key aspect of Japanese culture. And it is essentially that kind of important milestone. A lot of the games you like were inspired from in ways you might have not expected. And now, hopefully, you might have a more cohesive and coherent idea as to why that is the case. We just wanted to record a podcast to appreciate a series that in the Western world does not have as much love as it deserves, in my opinion. That is slowly changing right now, because I do believe, as I mentioned before, that Dragon Quest XI was actually successful in the West world in ways that previous titles in the series were not. And my hope, my sincerest hope, is that this will somehow lead us to be able to play Dragon Quest X, which I am still sore I cannot do it right now.
I guess you have to study Japanese.
I guess I have to study Japanese and go to live in Japan. Genius.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little detail there. I'm not going to learn another language just to play a video game, okay?
Oh, you're not that big of an anime enthusiastic.
Anime have subtitles, you mongrel!
Yeah.
Okay. This is where the podcast ends. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And try not to kill too many slimes on your way back to the castle in order to save the game of life. They're poetic.
Yeah.
I am Madhog the Master.
I'm a hedonistic actor.
The chosen one of legend, he shall deliver us unto salvation from the evil dragon lord who kidnaps princesses. Go save the world, the chosen one, thou must.
Not because I want, but because I must.
But thou must. Good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
Night.